Let's start, Marcellus, with the NBA and some interesting reports from Brian Windhorst of ESPN and our very own Clay Travis. Not surprised that smart people are now starting to throw out ideas on how we can restart the sports world and the NBA in particular. Of course, the NBA is near and dear to our hearts, particularly for you, Marcellus, a Clippers fan. This is supposed to be your season to win a championship. Well, Brian Windhorst of ESPN kicked it off when he did a report, and I'm going to summarize it with a tweet that I think he put it out per Windhorst. Various ideas have been floated by players and executives. One is to consider using a sprawling casino property in Las Vegas where everything could be held under one roof. Others have suggested playing in the Bahamas where a ballroom could be converted into playing court specifically. Anyway, Windhorst throws that out. And then yesterday on Clay Travis's website, Outkick the Coverage, Clay expanded and expounded on the concept of the NBA picking up and moving to various casino properties in Las Vegas. I'm going to summarize what he said. Rather than try to play around the country or pick a few neutral sites to host games, the NBA should relocate the entire league to Las Vegas, put every team inside hotels the league exclusively controls, and play out the remainder of the seasons in gyms in Las Vegas. And Marcellus, to me, this Las Vegas idea has a lot of merit. Of course, the NBA Summer League already transpires there, and we've seen how exciting that has been in the last few years. But look, these hotels are empty right now. They need someone in there and some things happening. And I think there are ways to perhaps control the virus, test players daily, and restart the NBA. And perhaps, and to me, I would start it with the playoffs. I would go straight to the playoffs, and everybody would get in the playoffs. I'd give the top seeds in the West and the East a bye. Everybody gets in the playoffs. We start with best-of-5 series. But I think the idea of the NBA picking up and going to Las Vegas, I think it has some merit, and it's an idea that should be considered. First, Ric Bucher is going to join us. But first, Marcellus, what say you about moving to Las Vegas, the NBA?
Well, it sounds amazing. Look, we understand it does have some legs, as you stated. And if you look at the situation, I can understand our eagerness and our thirst to get back to our normal and get back to playing some sports. At the same time, this sounds like a classic case of duck talk. And if you know what duck talk is, that means on the surface, it looks smooth and it sounds kind of simple. But underneath the surface is very complex and very difficult to pull off. And I think the toughest part about it all is not what you laid out or what Clay laid out or Brian laid out. I think it's the fact that there isn't a common consequence from the players, owners, and even television partners. We're all trying to get back together for the normalcy of sports because we know that this is a case where the economics and the flow of the economics needs to be preserved. But in trying to preserve your wealth, you may be compromising others' bill of health. So a quarantine area in Las Vegas sounds simple enough. But what are those numbers looking like in terms of who's allowed in, who's not allowed in? But more so, the fact that the players who used to get their money being at home half the time and then going on road games are now asked to be in a very different situation where the owners aren't asked to be in that same situation. The television executives and partners are not asked to be in that same predicament. And I wonder where they come out even on that equation of compensation. And it's not necessarily monetary, but certainly this is not a level playing field in terms of the sacrifice being asked of the players versus the owners and the television partners.
All right, this is Speak for Yourself from the crib. Let's go out to the Bay expert and our NBA expert, Ric Bucher. Ric, welcome to Speak for Yourself from the crib. What say you about the idea of potentially taking the NBA to Las Vegas?
Well, I can tell you that probably the GMs that I've spoken to over the last couple of weeks, I would say 2 out of 3 are very optimistic that there will be games played and the season will be resumed. So that conversation is legitimate. And I'm right down the middle between the two of you in that, Marcellus, I agree with you that there's a risk here, not so much from the coronavirus standpoint, because I was at the last Nets-Lakers game and spoke to a player, and he told me that health officials had told them, you're not really at risk. You're not in the biggest risk category. It's more that you would be contributing to spreading. And this was before they had shut everything down. And so I believe there's a way to protect the players and to quarantine them and isolate them so that you don't threaten the public. And I'm with Jason. I believe that the NBA should pull out all stops in order to make this happen, and that it does have the wherewithal to do that. Fans all too often, and we know it being around athletes, knowing what, having experienced it firsthand in Marcellus's case, we know what the challenges are and how difficult it is to be a professional athlete. But so many fans out there think that professional athletes are pampered, that they don't love the game as much as they do. This would be a tremendous opportunity for those players to demonstrate that, you know what, we do care, and we are going to make a sacrifice here in order to give you entertainment in this very difficult time in everybody's life. And so wherever the monetary things fall, the reality is that the goodwill that would be created in doing this and making this sacrifice, and we're talking about a sacrifice of what, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks on the outside. I believe the value of that for players and the connection between the NBA players and their fans would be immeasurable.
Yeah, I just think that sports have such a monumental impact and value to American culture that, let's say LeBron James, who has come out and said, hey, man, it would be tough to play without fans there. I think that once Adam Silver, other involved parties in the NBA start explaining to LeBron the importance of creating some normalcy for American citizens and creating some calm and reducing the panic. And that's what I think playing sports would involve. I think LeBron could get on board with playing without fans, because I think that's what we would be talking about in Las Vegas. And again, when you think about these sprawling casino properties, you bring your family with you. You're quarantined in these hotels with your family as well. And as Rick said, this is a 6 to 8 week process in Las Vegas. Bring your family. So, look, as teams get eliminated, they get to go home. We're not talking about all of the NBA being trapped in Las Vegas. And so I think I wouldn't say, I'm not going to call it worth the risk, because I'm not sure if the risk of what we're talking about, how much greater is it than what we're all doing, staying at home, interacting with a small handful of people, because I think you'd still be interacting with a small handful of people. And then I think you would be working with people who are getting tested daily. Marcellus, I think they can minimize some of the risk and make this worthwhile.
Yeah, certainly perfect is the enemy of good. So there's no real good situation or scenario to play out. And we certainly shouldn't be looking for anything of perfection. That said, how do you mitigate what's going to come in consequence from this difference in us going to our normal theater, arena, and venue and seeing our athletes participate? Here's one thing that I think we need to keep in mind, as much as we'll keep the economic flow going, which is a huge piece of this. Preparation is the separation when it comes to athletics in particular. And the difference between guessing and anticipating on a play is how you prepared for that same moment, whether it's physically, the muscle memory, or mentally, you being in the right conditions and having the right atmosphere that allows you to prepare for those moments. I'm not so sure what's the detail around these guys being placed in an adequate situation where they could perform as normal. We're already going to get into some dicey areas in terms of asterisk around this season, and thoughts of the 99 Spurs come to mind of how people try to put that championship with an asterisk, but it's going to be compromised somewhat going forward. I just don't want them to do so much that it's not even worth us doing it if people are not going to fully respect the product.
Well, Marcellus,
Rick, you have a second thought?
The biggest challenge or the biggest concern that I have is we're talking about guys are going to take 2 months, potentially at the very least 2 months off, and then have to get back in condition and get everybody together. I mean, you need at least 3-4 weeks for teams to get together and for players to have a heads up that you are going to be playing meaningful games. But then you're going not just to start the regular season or preseason and then regular season, you're going presumably straight to playoffs. And the intensity of that play, going from having taken 2 months off, the injury risk is what I am most concerned about in this equation. Like I said, the players are going to be the ones that are going to be making the greatest sacrifice. But I would dare say that, again, we often talk about players being heroic, and I think we overinflate that meaning when we talk about athleticism. But doing this in this instance, to me, would truly have some heroic qualities, considering what it would mean to our entire country to have something to see and that would tell us that things are getting back to normal.
Look, I think that there are some rules that could be put in place in terms of minimizing people's health risks, in terms of playing and coming in from out of shape. You can limit the minutes that guys could play early on. You could, again, some of that is about the coaching and the organization protecting its players. And then I think as fans, we would all have reasonable expectations. This isn't, particularly the start of this, isn't going to be what we typically see from the NBA playoffs. There will be some sloppiness. There will be some guys getting back in shape. But the rewards will go to the teams that handle it best, the players that have done the best job of staying in shape. They will be rewarded. And to me, that's what sports is all about. I'll just go back to, I think this idea has great merit. I think there's great merit in playing games and letting these guys finish the season. I don't think it's all just about money, but look, if money and economics is the driving force, I get it. Because again, people got to understand poverty and again, we're talking about super wealthy NBA players, but the MGM, Caesar's Palace, all these properties need to make money because they have employees that they take care of. Look, poverty is a killer just as much as a virus. And so anything we can do to help the economy and get back to a sense of normalcy is actually protecting the health of American citizens and this economy and America as a whole. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. And be sure to check out more of the best clips from Speak for Yourself, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.